Bonsoir tout le monde, bienvenue à
Good
cette
evening,
réunion du Conseil
and
municipal.
welcome to this meeting of the
Troisième lundi du mois.
third
Et
Monday of the
c'est une
month,
réunion
which is an
d'information,
information
pas une
session.
réunion formelle
It's not the
où
official council
on
meeting
approuve
where we have
des
to
millions et millions
adopt
de
and
dollars ou
approve
même
millions of dollars worth.
85 cents.
And we don't even approve 25 cents worth
Alors,
here.
on reçoit des présentations
We
de
receive
différentes organisations
presentations from different
et ça nous aide
organizations,
des fois
and
à mieux poser des questions,
it
des
allows
questions plus
us
intelligentes.
to ask
Et où
better and
d'ailleurs,
more
au
intelligent
fur et à
questions
mesure, on connaît pas
later
tous
and to learn,
les experts dans
because we're
tous les
not
secteurs de
necessarily
la communauté.
experts in all
Alors,
sectors of the
la
community.
question de se tiendre
So
à
it's
point
a question of staying up to
de
date
ce qui se passe un peu partout dans les diverses
and
organisations où on fait affaire.
to make sure that we're aware of everything that's going on within all of the organizations that we deal with. And this evening, we're going to be getting presentations from staff and from the director, the CEO of Vitalité Health Network, Dr. France Desrosiers. So welcome back, rather, because we see you quite frequently. It's nice to see you back, as always. Thank you. And thank you for welcoming us here. We were really eager to come back to talk about certain issues, to go into more greater depth on certain issues. We'd like to explain what's going on within the Vitalité Health Network, and more specifically, what is being planned for your area, your community. We prepared a presentation, but it's more informal. I'm accompanied by a few VPs and assistant VPs who are going to talk more specifically about their portfolios. So for public information, I don't know if you're aware, but the Vitalité Health Network has almost 8,000 employees, as well as its 600 physicians and 800 volunteers throughout the province, throughout the north of the province and the southeast. We serve almost 250,000 persons through 60 different points of service, including 11 hospitals. Our budget is almost $775 million every year. Over the last year, of course, this allowed us to, well, the calm after the storm of the pandemic, it allowed us to refocus and review our whole reason for being and all of our missions and visions, values that had been adapted. And I'll go back to this. But first of all, I'd like to mention that within our directions, our strategic directions, we want to come closer to the community, but also improve the staff experience and to improve the patient experience, of course. Two of the priorities came out from these directions. The first one is to improve access to primary health care throughout the territory, as well as to improve the patient flow within the hospitals. The patient flow, that's a funny word, but we want to improve the patient experience, but throughout the whole care continuum, through community, going through the point of service and back to the community. And we thought that we needed more transparency, more information. We have different strategies to achieve this, but we have a quarterly report that is published. It is found on our website, and our annual report has always been published, but we met with the community, different groups, and we do this regularly in order to go a little deeper in these quarterly reports, to discuss our vision, and to continually try and identify these projects that we could work on together. My colleagues are going to say a little more about this later, but I'd like to point out that one of the mandates, one of the things that we said we need to do, one of our objectives is to prepare for the future. So it's all well and good to meet the needs of today, but we want to readjust in order to better implement a strategic, a rapid strategy approach, and to be able to better focus on specific projects in order to achieve results within 90 days that are measurable and that we can present to the public. We also will identify another series of priorities, always within these 90-day cycles. At the same time, we're working on building our capacity to forecast our needs over the next 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. We know that the tsunami is just coming. The population is aging, and we need to serve a greater number of people with fewer human resources. We have to increase our synergy with all of our partners, including the community, and rethink our approaches to become more innovative, to better answer the needs of all of the community groups. I talked about this strategic a rapid strategic operation. We know that there are solutions that already exist. We have specialists in the field. Our communities are part of those. So you'll see that there's a primary healthcare provider group that worked on the sessions, during sessions that were a day, 2 days, or 3 days long to really identify the problem, to really identify different strategies and solutions to make sure that everything has been prioritized and determined over the next year to come up with concrete results for all of our patients. I mentioned transparency. This is our performance report that is available on the website, and all of our projects have to come up with results on health results. So this bulletin, it's a performance report, is you see a lot of red on it. There's not a lot of green yet, so we can't tell lies to the public. We have major challenges in front of us, but the important thing is that we are headed in the right direction, that we're trending in the right direction, and that we trust that we're trending in the right direction. Every time you see a plus beside a red box, it means it's getting better. So if I want to simplify this, it's always available on our website, and it's updated every 3 months. And here in our quarterly reports that I mentioned, we also go into more depth on the different improvement projects that are having an impact on one of our performance indicators that is found in the table. Now, I'm taking Brigitte's place, aren't I, here? Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Brigitte Sonia Ferguson, who is our VP, University Strategy, Mission, and Planning, and she's the expert in all of these tables. I'll let her explain them to you. I was going to let her go on and on. It was great. So, okay. So, oh, there's only one slide left for me. That's just perfect. So France showed you our performance reports. It's really important to have a good visibility on the website so that we can understand where we're at, so we can improve. But also we're looking at forecasts, and we adopted a new way for our strategic planning this year. We're going to do continuous strategic planning. We want to be able to be very nimble. We want to adjust along the way to make sure that we improve. And all of this is based on the fact that we have to be nimble. We have to be flexible and adapt to the changing needs within the complexity of the system, with this tsunami of the aging population, with the reduction in the available staff level. And so we're doing planning that is constantly informed by demographics, epidemiological forecasts, and different socioeconomic status numbers. And we look at national forecasts to see how we can better prepare and use our system to meet the needs of our population. We look at all of the studies, and at the same time, we look at the historic use of our services to see how we can best adapt them to meet the needs. Because it's not just a question of adding resources that will solve all of the problems. We have to think of technological changes, innovation through artificial intelligence, for example. There are different models for service delivery, care delivery, that I'm sure that my colleague is going to share with you in a moment. And my colleague, Ghislaine, is VP of Communication Engagement. She's going to talk to you about what this means for your municipality. Well, in fact, I wanted to talk to you about recruitment and retention of staff. As you know, there's a shortage in staff in all categories, in all job categories, and healthcare, of course, is not an exception to this rule. A year ago, Vitalité Health Network hired a new VP for employee experience, whose mandate is to implement strategies for the recruitment and the retention of staff. So this included international trips because, of course, the pool of available resources here within Acadia, within Canada, is not sufficient. So they made several trips internationally to the countries of North Africa and Western Africa. And in June 2022, we were able to reverse the trend in terms of the retirements and departures. So there are now a greater number of hires than retires. So it took a little longer for the nursing staff. It was a little harder on that group, but we were able to reverse the trend there in hiring and departures there in 2023. And we're still actively recruiting in different regions, and we're looking for staff in different categories of employment. And here on the next slide, if I use the stylus, it would probably work better than my pen. Yeah, so it's the same trend here that we see for in the Beau Séjour zone. There are a greater number of hires than departures. There are several initiatives to retain the staff members as well. And we have exit interviews to see why people are leaving and to try and encourage them to remain. Now, through amongst the strategies to retain the staff and we want to promote their integration because we have employees who come from elsewhere in the world. We know that there is a housing shortage here in Dieppe, so we're going to ask for the communities and the municipalities to help us in welcoming people from elsewhere and to help integrate them. So we're going to launch a program uh, to ask people to become a host for a member from the international community. In October, we're going to launch this new program to match Dieppe residents with international staff members. And we're talking about primary healthcare next. Mr. Patrick Parent will take the floor. Yes, please leave the stylus here, though. Don't leave with it. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're talking about transformation, and Dr. Desoriers mentioned it earlier, mentioned a tsunami. We know that until 2043, the curve of chronic problems is going to get worse and worse. The system currently, the way it's structured, cannot meet that need because it wasn't created to meet that. So it's going to become essential to focus more on prevention in the future. And that's what we want to talk to you about. One of the main pillars that Dr. Desrosiers is responsible for is access to primary care. And this is one of my portfolios, actually. I want to implement a new model to improve access. So you can see some figures here, the number of practicing medicines in the community. There's about 40 physicians in Dieppe to serve the population. There's no problem in terms of the number of physicians, but it's more of a problem of access to a physician. Some of you probably have to wait months to receive a service, and that's not acceptable. We want to optimize the service. We want to set up collaborative cells or groups. We're trying to work on this currently. So it would be a project that would be made up of a physician, a nurse practitioner, perhaps physiotherapist, pharmacist, and so on. And they would coordinate and delegate the services in order to allow everybody better access. If we look throughout the region, it says Dieppe and Memramcook because that's the way the area has been cut. But the statistics are fairly similar in any case. You can see the percentage here of the population that have access to urgent care, but or have access to a primary care provider, which is 93%, but only 46% have access within 5 days. Now, the vulnerable population, we look at this very closely. These are people or clients that have chronic conditions. We know that this is going to increase over the next years as well. So we have to be, this is going to help that curve go up as well. And if I connect this to the hospital sector, it means that the length of stay will be longer, the consultations are more complex, so it takes longer, and this means the number of conditions will keep going up as well. I'm going to give you a brief example this morning. It's just a snapshot. We like to give these anecdotes, these stories, and they're real stories. I mean, we've changed her name, but it's a real story, a real patient that we're presenting here today. Janine, who's 65, has diabetes. Her physician retired. She needs blood testing and all sorts of other services on a regular basis. In today's system, you can see all of the people that Janine is going to have to call. She might be referred elsewhere. She might not. She might wait for a call from somebody. She'll have to go from one provider to another, and there will be no follow-up possible, and it'll take 3 or 4 months. That's a situation today that we see regularly. Now, in the new system, Janine is going to be able to call a referral center that has advanced triage capability. She will be referred to the right provider at the right time for the right care. That will include nurse practitioners, dietitians, and follow-up as necessary. If Janine has mental health problems, the social worker will be there to act as necessary. So the service will be provided in this way. And this is not a new model. It's something that has existed for a long time in BC, in Ontario, in different states in the US, and different areas, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Texas, for example. And we're going to add our local flavor to it, though, but to say that through this structure, we'll be able to offer much faster service. We're hoping, based on the measurements we adopt, it's going to be access within 5 days, 5 working days. We're going to go from 3 months on average to 5 days by delegating the access and not adding any extra burden on physicians, because it's going to be a collaborative structure. People are going to work together and no longer in silos. So we've already started implementing this. We already have a certain number of cells. We have the Dr. Bourdage, Dr. Courtier, and Dr. Saucier work in a clinic. We've already started putting this together. Dr. Bourdage was working alone in the past. We're going to go from 55,000 patients to 15,000 patients by 2026, 3 times the number. We're already starting to see very quick results. It's quite soon, because I wanted this to be measurable and targeted. We're going to have dashboards that are published every month so that we can show the performance of the cell. But when we have indicators, then it allows us to we'll have counter indicators again. We don't want to create negative behaviors or negative in the long term. So we want to make sure that quality care continues to be offered. I call them cells, but they're family physician groups. There are a number of groups of physicians who are interested in setting up these models. They're doing it throughout the province, but in our 13 community, it's developing very quickly, this model. And our second priority is to improve patient flow through the hospital by becoming more performing. And Dr. Desrosiers is going to come back here. Yeah, I just want to say 2 things very quickly. I talked about it quickly on patient flow. So it's the way their flow through their pathway through the services, through using lab services, imagery services, or surgery services, whatever service you need while you're in hospital. We just want to improve our performance in order to have the shortest length of stay possible, because especially our elderly who lose their independence very quickly when they're hospitalized. So we want to keep them in hospital as short a time as possible and send them back home as quickly as possible. We do have an improvement project that was launched here at the CHU in 4C, where we improved the length of stay and improved the whole organization of the discharge. We're going to give ourselves 2 years to implement it in all the units throughout the network. And there's another program that you've heard of, I'm sure. It's the robotic surgery. And I'm talking about it this evening because the CHU Dumont team is really extraordinary. We had an objective, and I'm probably not giving you the right figures, but it's something like this. Within 8 weeks, they were supposed to be able to conduct 60 surgeries using the robot. That was the highest performance in Canada. They doubled that number here in the same number of weeks. So we are now the champions across Canada in terms of the speed with which we were able to use this surgery robot. Now, if you don't know what it is, this is a robot that assists our surgeons. It will allow much faster recovery as well because it's much less invasive for the patient. The length of stay is shorter, and there's fewer complications. We can't do it for all types of surgery yet, but it does 3 types of surgery. So congratulations. And the city of Dieppe was happy to participate in the fundraising activities. Yes, and all of the physicians and the whole surgery teams are very happy about that. So we have other initiatives like that to improve the performance and improve the wait time for surgery. We have almost no long waiters over a year. It's almost they're almost at zero for the long waiters, the one that will wait over a year, and we're improving our performance amongst those who wait 3 months for their surgery already. And I'm giving the floor back to Rino, who's going to talk about mental health. Thank you. Good evening. Mental health, I'll start with homelessness, which is something that deserves our close attention. In cooperation with our community partners, we're really focusing on the integration of our services, including mental health and addictions. Over the last year, we have a team that is dedicated to that vulnerable population, and we do outreach and we give motivational interviews to help people go towards services. And one-at-a-time therapy, or OAT, this is a new model for service delivery in the model health field and addictions, and we've started it 2 years ago. It's a new service that is complementary, and through this, which is offered in all mental health clinics and dependent addiction treatment centers throughout the Vitalité network. The objective of this service is to allow faster access, one that is integrated, and reduce the wait times. So the service is now offered to youth and adults. We were able to reduce the wait list by 60% over the last year. A mobile mental health service. We established a partnership with the RCMP J Division, and we can now intervene in crisis situations. We're in partnership with the police, and they need us for our expertise, and of course we need them for our safety. And through this service, we can act, and we did over 1,500 interventions in 2022, and we were able to diffuse the situations in a number of cases, and we avoided 3.5 visits to the emergency every day through this service. Emerging issues in mental health, other than stigmatization associated to mental health, it's a social phenomena that is being seen everywhere. It's very complex, and that has an impact on access to service. So we wanted to talk about this because this is an issue that in which we can take actions, and that and we will take action. And there's also problems navigating the service. So we now have what we call Navigap, NB. If you just search it in Google, you find Navigap, which is available online and you can get information on mental health and substance use. And there's a list of services, and there's also a center and books and information and booklets. And in order to better navigate this very complex system, we are implementing a stepped care model to direct the patient to the right care, the right service at the right time, at the right level. And in another problem in mental health amongst our youth, we know that has been an increase of 16% in the last 3 to 5 years. The pandemic, of course, did not help with that. And now, as I mentioned, it's all we want to improve access for youth, access to primary care, and we're able to do that through the one at a time therapy initiative. Thank you. I think we'll wrap up quickly. I can go through this very quickly, but I think you're aware of the project that's going on right now on Champlain Street. This is a project that it's still under construction, but the clinic is in operation and is already starting to see patients. And we're hoping that the infrastructure will improve it. And I'd just like to talk to you about the assessment of the community needs. Now, this is the network is responsible for this through the Act. It has to assess the needs of the community, and this assessment is crucial for us to better understand the issues within the community that go beyond the health system, beyond the hospital. And we have to be a good partner with our communities in order to identify these needs, but also to work with them to come up with solutions. So I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that there will be meetings in the fall that will, first of all, to identify the stakeholders to start this assessment process. We're going to create a community advisory group that will be a stakeholder with us to evaluate the needs, and we will launch this assessment project with you throughout the fall. And that wraps up our presentation. Thank you.
Puis je vais demander aux membres du conseil s'il y en a qui ont des questions.
Okay, thanks for the presentations. I will ask members of council if they have any questions. Mrs. Turgeon-Roy. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have a question concerning the role of the betterment or welfare of communities. And the reason I'm talking about this is University of Moncton, for example, the students there in nursing care, in the spring, they approached us because they had a project concerning evaluating the needs in are you involved with the University of Moncton with that? I know that with certainly we try to work very, very close with our academic staff. Certainly we're involved in some things. I could probably tell you a little bit about it, but it's a priority for us to collaborate and involve research as much as possible in our different initiatives. The process, the needs evaluation that will end this fall will include some people from the University of Moncton in the especially to look for solutions and implementing them, because this will certainly advance research. Yes, certainly, I think a certain amount of work was done when it comes to evaluating your needs. So that reflects what was done in Kent, where we looked for the things there was a certain evaluation of needs in the Kent area, and we pushed it even further. And Mrs. Leboutillier, yes, Your Worship, I have two questions, and I would also like to start by, I didn't have the luck, let's say, but I went last year. I think we talked about all aspects of the hospital whether it's in recovery, in intensive care, and then after post-surgical, I think all parts were touched upon. And I can just tell you that my family throughout, I mean, bravo, the service was great. The experience as such was very done. I saw lots of improvement, and your staff is working hard, and truly they take their jobs to heart. And I thought it was important. Certainly, we have uh, a steep hill to climb, but certainly you're there. My first question concerns collaborative work. Will that be will that be coming directly from Vitality, or will we be talking about some private services? Might there be private clinics, for example? Thank you for the question. It's a open question for co-building. The approach we had last year, we started with a transformation of the organization we want to take was not go from the top down. We want to involve different people, get as many opinions as possible, and have co-building together. So we're opening the door to all sorts of possible stakeholders. We want to have all sorts of people around the table involved in this and working this together. When it comes to the private sector, for now, we're not closing the door. There's no private element for now. If ever there was a possibility of going with the private sector, it would have to be done in an insured way. That's what we want to assure with the provincial government. We want to make sure that the government pays for it and not by patients themselves. So if ever there's a possibility on the private side, it would not be something patients would have to pay for. So it's just to uh, acquire capacity, but in such a way that the patient doesn't have to pay more. So these are possibilities that we're looking at. If this improves quality and access to service, certainly we'll be very open to that. There are many groups who have already approached us because the model is becoming more and more popular. So we'll look at that and we'll go gradually because with our new approach, we're not trying to settle everything at once. We're trying to do everything a little bit at a time. We do a little bit, we learn from our errors, and we do a little more. And this is part of our continuous improvement culture. And but we want to do it by respecting the public system. Yes. Second question, when will we be looking at making the emergency room larger at Georges Dumont? Okay, well, or maybe not expanding, but making it better. Yes, but we know that the design is not adequate at all for current needs nor for the future needs. And one of the problems that make this is one of the things uh, that are a problem for the patient flow. So a steering plan was set up and proposals were made to government to have a complete renovation of the emergency room. But to respect our transparency culture, this is something that will not be done tomorrow. Certainly, we're talking about something very, very very imposing, and we will need the government to help us, but we can't just wait for that project. So we are going by smaller pieces, and we're trying to get different budget parts to perhaps take care of certain things. And if we can put certain things in place, we will have a lot more effectiveness for day surgery, endoscopy, etc. We will have small little projects within what we're working on while working on trying to have a larger project for a full renovation of the emergency department. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. My worry, I heard you mention a few times that there's the currently aging population and the the aging population coming later. At this time, I may be wrong, but at Georges Dumont, we have one floor which is full of seniors who need care that we cannot place in private nursing homes. And what's worrying me with that is why can't the private homes, why can't they take, for example, level 3 people? What is preventing the government from giving such licenses to some of these nursing homes? Because I know it's delicate, but at the same time, if our hospitals are full of seniors, I mean, this takes space away from other people who might need care. So what do you think would be done? Because we're talking about we are the next ones. We will be the next seniors, right? Well, that's a very good question, and that is the main question. We're talking about 35, 36% of our hospitals. Well, no, 35, 36% of our beds are occupied by alternative care patients. So these are people who shouldn't be in a hospital area. They should be at home or in a nursing home. And in some places, it's up to 50, 60%. And that's only going to go up. The solution, there are different possible elements to that. First of all, we are working a lot to improve our internal processes. But as you know, the the nursing homes are managed by social development, and we're the only province in Canada where they're operated separately. There's health on the one side and social development on the other side. And right now they're trying to work very hard to meet their needs, but we have to find ways of working together. One of the problems at this time is that certainly when we work with them, we find that they have staff shortages. They don't have the staff they need. That's one of the main problems right now. I can't speak for them, but we make proposals sometimes, and we made proposals to drive certain centers where we could take take responsibility for that, for the transfer of patients more quickly. We're still waiting for answers at this time, but certainly, no doubt about it, we're going to need a strategy soon to either unblock this or have transition centers. We're going to need collaboration between the health groups, social development groups, communities, community leaders. We have to get involved as a group because we can't, because there isn't just one person or one group that will take care of that. Yes, well, I've spoken to many owners of nursing homes or special care homes. They are actually ready to welcome level 3 people, but there's something blocking things. The province doesn't want to yield something. Well, you would have to ask the province about that. Inaudible? Well, they were saying there are different factors and all that. It's important to understand that we are one of the provinces that place our people in nursing homes. And that means there's a lack of help at home. If we could develop more support at home, I don't know if you've heard about nursing homes without walls, where we would bring the services to the people's home. We should really focus on those solutions. We are placing them 1 year to 2 years sooner than other provinces in nursing homes. And did you talk about the project that we wanted to have for recruitment for the nursing homes? That in our next trimester, we want to include them to have special care people to help find these people and be partners with these nursing homes. Thank you, Mr. Lantaigne. And time is going very quickly. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly we'll have we could spend the entire night on this, perhaps maybe several days and nights. But I'll ask one question. I'd like to hear about the. I'm glad to see that we have more people are being hired than leaving, but of course a lot of we've had a shortage of nurses, but of course there's a problem when it comes to recognizing prior learning. I spoke to a nurse who was from France, and I think she was here for a year and a half. She had her diploma, she had her experience, etc., and she was just waiting to be able to go on the work. She wanted to join the job force, but she didn't have all the qualifications recognized. So have we been doing any better when it comes to that? Are things getting better? From what I hear, it's not the networks problem. No, but we we are things have gotten better over the past year. We've been able to increase recognition of prior learning for France, certainly, and perhaps others. And I'm not sure I can't remember who the other places, but we have 4 countries where we've been able to accelerate things. I think it's 600 hours of practice within our community to instead to then be approved to work in our area. And we are working on that training with the CCNBs as well. As well, over the past 18 months, there's we have a we have special care people. From those people, that person can become a licensed practical nurse if they have a certain if they work in our communities, they can obtain the title of licensed practical nurse if they have a certain type of training. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. Yes, Mrs. Goodboo. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. And certainly you've talked about lots of things, despite all the distractions. But I'm thinking about the geriatric service. And we were talking about having something in 2024. Can you tell us more about that, please? Anybody? Okay, don't be shy. Well, the geriatric hospital is a geriatric approach, the multidisciplinary approach to in order to see to that person be uh, as autonomous as possible, maintain their autonomy at home as long as possible. That's the main uh, that's the main aim, and the construction will be starting in 2024, but the service is already being offered by the hospital. But right now, we can't welcome as many people as as when we'll be able to have the completed building in 2024. Yes, well, thank you once again for your excellent presentation. It's always a pleasure to receive you here in Dieppe and to maintain the conversation and communication with us, and certainly that's appreciated by us. Thank you. Have a good evening. Now, the next presentation is Destination Moncton Dieppe. Our friends from, if there are people for the presentation of Moncton Cares, that was postponed for another day. The people said they weren't coming tonight, and so they will come back another day.
OK. Je vais te mettre mes lunettes, sinon je t'aveugle. Allô, José. C'est le fun, on peut voir tous des amis ici.
C'est ça.
Hello. Yeah, we need more. We're with friends. Well, good evening and welcome. And without waiting any further, we know we only have 15 minutes, so I will try to be as concise as possible. So, hello. We know it won't be easy. Yeah, we know each other well. Oh, you. Oh, well, I just want to thank you all for giving us time. I want to thank also my colleagues who worked very, very hard to make this project work properly. I think you know Mr. Schofield, who is working on just about everything in life. And thank you to my assistant as well, Julian Summers. She is our PDG. And Ron Duguid, but I think you know him. He's worked for many departments here in Dieppe as well as Moncton. So I'll start the presentation. It'll give you a general look at everything that we're doing, our board of directors and others. We're talking about 2022 because we're almost finished 2023, but still, we have to look at our support to the different events. The strong parts are when we want to give an approach of what's going to be waiting for us in 2024. So we started. We want to go from have the 3.5% tax on lodging, and we found it was a great decision in the end. That allowed us to get more funds up to during the pandemic, and certainly none of that money has been spent yet, and the money stayed with the municipalities until the first quarter of 2022. Then we hired Jillian, who started working in April, and we opened our office, our temporary office, at the Delta. This was our temporary office in June, and council has started working in 2022, and there are people from Dieppe, Moncton, and also the Hotels Association, and people that we had all sorts of hotel owners and people who are there for the restaurant weekend, and other people with the tourism industry. Oh, there's our council. So you can see there's Cindy Bourque, Tammy Steves, Christian Cyr, Beth Judson, Mark Holmes, Jocelyn Congton, and others. And we also have 3 staff. And there's Jillian and Karen, who are there full-time, and Anne, who is there part-time. But we also have other people join us for the team. And so there was something else I wanted to say here. Ron will talk about finances a little later. And I just want to give you an idea of what happened in 2022. You probably know about this. 2022 was our first year after the pandemic, where we started making a little bit of money. 2023, we're even more occupied. There are even more and more people working, and the revenue is still lower, and we expect to have a year or year and a half before we see the revenue levels that we saw in 2019. So that's important to note. Many people are saying, well, things are going well, etc. Well, things are going well, but we were at 84% of full occupation of rooms in August. And so I'll talk about this a little bit more. I want to say that things are going well, but we're still waiting a year or a year and a half before we can see how things were before the pandemic. So if there are any questions, I'll certainly take questions at the end. I think we'll take the questions at the very end. All right. Hello, Ray. Hello, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with us concerning Destination Moncton Dieppe. At the beginning of the summer, I had a chance to meet members of the municipality, and we talked about different things. So as part of a strategic planning, we defined our mission and our vision and our values. So you can see them here. Our mission and our vision and our values are led by three main these are the three main thrusts of our work. And so we want to commercialize the area and work in partnership with different stakeholders.
With a one-year plan in order to establish the new organization. The plan included things like staffing the organization with an internal team and with external vendors, and it's important to note that the board has placed a priority on local suppliers, both in Moncton and Dieppe, to develop an interim brand identity, to mobilize around immediate opportunities, to implement marketing tools like a website, social media channels, to look at a product service inventory in all aspects of tourism hospitality, to secure infrastructure sources of data so we can analyze, plan, and report on an ongoing basis, to employ interim marketing tactics to support fall 2022 and winter 2023 events, to build a plan to capitalize on World Junior Hockey Championships in 2023, and to create a one-year marketing plan that would then be the basis for our work plan going forward in the next 1, 3, and 5 years. Des indicateurs clés de performance ont été établis et ont fait l'objet d'une
And we
évaluation.
also have a look at the visitor experience, and these key performance indicators are there, and we see that there is the visitor experience, travel, trade, and partnership development, destination marketing, and meetings and conventions. As I said, one of the major opportunities was presented to our organization with the 2023 World Junior Championship. And this was a fairly calm season, but we still saw an increase of 40% compared to a normal month of December. And we were able to generate an estimated $20 million in economic activity.
Opportunity for Destination Moncton Dieppe, and through a strategic marketing partnership with Tourism New-Brunswick, we were able to invest in an international marketing campaign highlighting the region to a global audience. The campaign delivered exceptional results, which you'll see highlighted here, over 25 million impressions on TSN alone, 2 times a game at the end of the first period and the beginning of the second. And the message focused on natural resources, culinary delights, and the heart of our urban centers. Through this campaign, we were able to introduce our new organization, only 6 months old at the time, to a maximum number of audiences in an extremely quick timeline. Un autre secteur clé pour notre organisation est le développement.
Another key sector is conferences and trade shows, and we had all sorts of sales missions and on group trips, as well as conferences and others. The strategy for 2022 was to present this organization, and we had ambitious sales goals. And now as for results for 2022, for Moncton, Dieppe is maintaining its position as a top tourism performer in 2022. As you can see, 565 million in visitor spending, and this is 1.5 million was spent each day in Moncton, Dieppe. And then the total of visitors visitor spending went up by 72.5%. And we're talking about an increase of 4 percentage points in this.
Focused on a variety of strategic goals to continue to build on the success of our inaugural year. First, we look to offer a leisure marketing program that would offer 12-month coverage to attract audiences to the Moncton Dieppe region. The target markets that we approached included Atlantic Canada, Quebec, Ontario, New England, and we recently added Calgary as a result of the direct WestJet flight that is now a year-round destination for us, which is extremely exciting news. I would like to highlight that we have been extremely pleased to be working with Peach Marketing, a firm located just across the way over here, on the development of our leisure campaigns. The campaigns have delivered exceptional results, and we look forward to our continued work with their team on our fall and our winter campaigns. We've also been working to increase our attendance at marketplaces and trade shows to solidify relationships and sell Moncton Dieppe as a destination of choice for business events. Ray often jokes that if we're in our office, we're not doing our job. We should be on the road selling the destination. So that continues to be a priority going forward. Aussi, nous voulons augmenter notre catalogue d'atouts régionaux.
As well, we want to add to our catalog of assets, of year-long assets, and we have videos and photos in different areas to meet the needs of the professional and marketing parts. So we could talk about here in Dieppe. Okay, we are talking about restaurants, retail areas, etc. And as we've mentioned it, we are reinforcing our sales team to look into what happens with all markets and have a strategic plan that can be a long-term one by concentrating on the intermediate seasons.
In the first quarter, delivered promising occupancy results throughout the year. This year was the first opportunity to see real recovery and some
Alors, en
increase.
2022, nous avons vu déjà des possibilités. En 2022, il y a eu une augmentation de
The region, which is a 22-point increase from 2021 and a 28-point increase from 2020. 2023 has showcased strong numbers overall, as Ray has mentioned, and we are approaching pre-pandemic numbers. So our goal is to not only meet them, but beat them. Monthly occupancy is within percentage points of our average occupancy rate, and I look forward to being here next year and hopefully saying that we have met those.
Et j'ai hâte de pouvoir vous dire que nous we are continuing to looking at our conference and convention events as well as other events in the area. Sports tourism is very important for the visitors and is bringing in considerable amounts during the intermediate seasons. The Uniplex is an important actor in this field and is working with us regularly. And this will be very true when Dieppe has the Ringette National Championships next year. And as you know, the main events contribute in a significant way. Okay, we are contributing to many hotel stays in 2022 and 2023. And the hotel owners appreciate this and thank Dieppe for its involvement each year in all this. Our first official year was passionate, and we were able to have a post-COVID establishment and re-establish Moncton and Dieppe as a choice destination.
Nous continuerons à développer des relations et à accroître l'impact de notre région sur les scènes régionales, provinciales et nationales. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Ron Toogood, who is our board treasurer, and he's going to provide a brief overview of our 2022 audited financial statements, following which he and Ray will be happy to answer any questions. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Good evening, everyone. Is this showing? Do you know if it's?
It's not on the screen.
Oh, it's not. Oh, okay. There we go. Good evening. Good evening.
The audited financial statements, I believe, are going to be distributed after tonight's meeting, so you will have copies of those provided to you. The CPA firm of Teal Green in Moncton was engaged to conduct our required independent audit of the financial statements of the organization for 2002. They did deliver a clean opinion on the audit in their independent auditor's report, which is included in the statements which you will receive.
So I think Jillian and Ray already provided some background. The levy fees were being collected by the hotels starting September 2019. And our organization, the DMO, didn't really get rolling until 2022. The first grants were received in late 2021 from the cities of Moncton and Dieppe. Excuse me, I'm at that age where I can't just rely on.
I've been there for a long time, Ron, I tell you. I feel the pain.
Yeah, I'm at that point where I forget about it. I'm not used to it yet. The first grants from the cities were received in 2021, comprising 76% of all of the tourism accommodation levy amounts collected. As these amounts were collected prior to the pandemic and we weren't operating the DMD as we hoped we would be, those funds had accumulated through 2019, 2020, and 2021. And therefore, there was a significant surplus of funds available to the organization coming into 2022. 2022 summary, as Jillian and Ray mentioned, the staffing hiring began in the spring of 2022, and much of the corporate activity that year was focused on staffing, setting up the offices, and determining the strategic direction of the organization. 2022 revenues, therefore, significantly exceeded expenses. This situation has shifted as we moved into 2023, and it will for subsequent years as expenses begin to ramp up and the marketing and promotional activities begin to ramp up. There was an excess of revenues over expenses for the fiscal year 2022, just under $1.4 million on total revenues of $1.95 million. At December 31st, 2022, the unrestricted fund balance within our financial statements was $3.465 million, the bulk of which has been invested in short-term GICs. Total grant amount received from the City of Dieppe in 2022 was $238,857, and the total amount for prior years, 2019 to 2021, was $303,850. That's all I had on my formal report. As I mentioned, for 2023, we have seen a market increase in the marketing and promotion activity and expenses accordingly. I do anticipate that 2023 will see another surplus as we aren't just throwing money at whatever comes across our desks, but it's very strategic. And as Jillian and her team build up their contacts and their focus on getting out to the trade shows and things like that, and start getting the marketing and promotional media buys, we do expect expenses to start getting up in the range of what the revenues will be each year. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions excuse me. Est-ce que tu
as vu des questions.
Oui, exactement. OK.
Did you want to add something? No, it's just we took a little longer than planned. Are there any questions from councillors?
No.
If not, well, keep on trucking.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Merci pour vos présentations.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really a pleasure to see you again and continue the great job you're doing.
Un stylet pour changer ici avec les flèches. Oui. Fait que là, il y a les tableaux. Puis à la fin, j'ai mis les photos. Ah, OK. Mais ça apparaît. Ah, les autres, ils ont ça sur les écrans. Ça apparaît là, puis ça va apparaître. OK. On va mettre ça au début. Bonsoir à tous. C'est un
Bonsoir.
plaisir pour moi de vous
Good
présenter.
evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce Richard Perron, who is a president of Les Amis de la Nature Sud-Est, Friends of Nature. He's become a great ally for our group here for the environment. They're volunteers that are passionate, who have been working hard in the community for a long time now, and I thought it was important to give them the floor because they've been around for a long time. So they're going to talk about one of their most recent projects. What you have in your package is our data from 2022, but you'll see the figures for 2023 very shortly. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandre. Good evening and welcome here. Thank you. It's going to be a little lighter. You're going to be able to relax. It's going to be much easier to follow. So, first of all, I'd like to talk to you about three things. First of all, our club, the Southeast New Brunswick Friends of Nature, Les Amis de la Nature du Sud-Est. A part is in Dieppe. We have meetings every 2 weeks. No, every month, I'm sorry, monthly. In 1 month, it'll be at the Rotary Park in Dieppe, in the Rotary Pavilion, and we have invited guests from the city, and the following month we meet in Shediac. So we really cover the whole Southeast. I'd like just to talk to you a little bit about the club very briefly, and then I'll talk to you about our project on swallow nest boxes, and then I'll talk to you about our future milkweed garden. The milkweed is the plant that the monarch butterfly goes to, the monarch butterfly that only lays its eggs on this plant, nowhere else. I'll explain it all to you. So first of all, the Friends of Nature Club, as I mentioned, we have monthly meetings. We have monthly excursions. We go pick mushrooms. We go bird watching, the swallow bird nests, the tree boxes. We put perches for ospreys. We build nests for the tree swallows. We plant milkweeds, and we distribute plant. Now, the nesting boxes, well, that started over 20 years ago. Edgar Savoy, a golfer, started installing nesting boxes. People would pay $5 and he installed them on 2 golf courses, one the Pine Needle in Abu Shagan, and the other was a country meadow on Route 126. So he gave it up. I mean, he left, and so he went to the Oasis, and then it was forgotten for a few years. And then at one point, Louis-Émile Cormier, who is my friend and close partner, said one day, well, we can't just let it go. So he said, you can't just let it all go. It doesn't make sense. So, I mean, but it's a whole job. I mean, you're getting involved in something, and I wasn't ready. So he continued to goad me on. And finally I said, okay. And I said, and he said, okay, if you take this on, I'll back you up the whole way. And he has. So we looked after the building, the installation, the annual cleaning, the replacement as required of these nesting boxes. We set them up along the Dieppe trails from Pointe Renard right to the Pont des Cochons. I don't know if you know where that is. Do you know where the Pont des Cochons is? That there's a little creek that runs. It's fun when you have names like that. The Pont des Cochons, you'll never forget it. It's easy to remember. So it's right in front of the car wash there. And it runs along the trail right up to the Moncton city limits almost. And then we come back to the Pont des Cochons. You cross the street. There's a couple of nesting boxes there on the other side of the Pont des Cochons. And then behind the Guardian drugstore on Alain Gillette Street, there's another trail there that goes almost up to Dolbeau and Thomas Street, and then there's a whole other series of boxes there. So that's where we installed them. Now, I said 60 boxes, but there are actually 69 so far. And so every year we add some. I don't know when we're going to stop, but we're starting to have enough. It's difficult, you know, it's difficult to do it all, and the numbers change. And anyways, it's because we present reports every year for each sector, and there's about 15 different reports because we have to divide it up by sector. So we give the history of each one of the box, what's happened there. We give all of the details. I mean, it's interesting. It's really interesting to follow it year after year. But so where am I at now? No, I want to see the success rate. So you see that we started in 2017, and you could see that there were only 4 boxes in Dieppe. 3 out of 4 gave 75%. In Shediac, there were a greater number. There were 16. But every year, if you go to the right-hand column, you can see the last column, 20, 40, 64. We go up every year. So what we realized here is that Shediac was the poor cousin here. There were only 4, and then it went up to 14, and we added 10. And then every time Louis-Emile would say, well, you know, 60, 75%, 65%, and 91%. He said, you have to add some more there. We have to put some there, because in Shediac, they had a lot of difficulty. The first year, it was only 44% success rate. The second year wasn't so bad. It was 18 out of 75, but 73. But it's really difficult because it's by the water, and in the fall, not in the fall, no, rather in the spring, in June, there's these cold winds that come from the water, and that's very hard on the swallows because they eat flying insects. So if it's too cold, well, there are no insects, and they can't feed their young. So you'll see some nests where there's only eggs. In 2021, there was in one nest, or there was a mortality rate that was really high. We found some chicks, dead chicks, because it was really, really cold that year, and there was all of these winds came from the north. But Dieppe, there was nothing, so they were more sheltered. So my friend kept saying Dieppe is the paradise for tree swallows, and he really insisted on that. It's really the paradise. Sorry? Well, there's a lot of mosquitoes here, right? That brings them in. But no, it's their protection. They're more sheltered. So it was interesting to see that. When you study their habitat, you can see the importance that it has. And when we talk of climate change, we can talk about it too. It doesn't take a lot to make a big, big difference. So at the beginning, well, Dieppe was always the poor cousin. No, I didn't show you the most recent figures. They weren't ready for the presentation, so I'll just give them to you now. Shediac area in 2023, it's 40%, 17 out of 41. It was a very difficult year. For a total of 68 out of 100, but the numbers have gone down on this table here. Dieppe is now at 59 and went to 41 in Shediac, because there were a lot of the boxes were lost because of the water. We lost 8 nesting boxes, and we can't replace them. At the beginning, we replaced them, because it was at the right time. But now, when you lose 3, and then you lose another 2 or 3 there, so we don't replace them in Shediac anymore. We just put them in Dieppe instead. Dieppe is more sheltered from the elements, and that makes a big difference. So that's what I wanted to say about the swallow boxes. Now, the city has allowed us to prepare signage to show it, to say why we promote the installation of these nesting boxes, because it's very difficult for these birds. They depend on flying insects, and if there are no flying insects, it's over and done with. So they've gone down by 49% in very little time, especially in the east, and probably because of the proximity of the sea. But by going down like that, I mean, they're disappearing and the numbers are going down every year. So by building these nesting boxes, it gives them a helping hand. And the Environment Service Department is really happy. So we only met Alexandre a short time ago. Oh, so this is a box here. These are the boxes that we install along the trail. You can see the names. So we put the name. So if you walk along the trail in Dieppe, it's the best place for swallows. Every time we meet somebody, people say, "Ah, they can't go. People can't get over it. They wait for spring because quite often people don't even notice these boxes, but they really work really well." So this is what it looks like, a nesting box. So it's easy to open. You can see inside. And the end of the season, we go in, we clean it out. And when we take the nest out, we take the nest out of the nesting box. And that's where we can see if it was successful or not. If it's full of droppings, well, it means that it was a success. It was a good year. And for us, that it was a success. And sometimes they just build their nest. Sometimes there's eggs in it as well. But in Dieppe, I don't know. I have over 200 around my house that I clean out regularly. And I can't get over it. I was telling my friend, this is paradise here for swallows. Well, everybody wants to come to Dieppe. Everybody wants to come to Dieppe. Well, yeah, exactly. Even the birds and the mosquitoes, of course, to feed them. So my friend is a citizen of Cocagne, but in his heart, he's a Dieppois. So I'd just like to say a few words on the milkweed garden. That's when we met. We had the pleasure of meeting Alexandre because, well, we asked him if he was interested in our project. And we needed a place, a lot. We didn't have one. So I was put in contact with Melissa and she said, well, no, go see Alexandre. And so that's how it came about. And we got together and we agreed. Well, let me tell you the story of how it happened. Every time we cleaned out our boxes every year, Louis-Émile, when he'd go behind the drugstore, the Guardian pharmacy on Alain Gillette, he'd say, what a wonderful property there. That would be perfect for a milkweed garden. But I wasn't that interested because it was awfully close to Dieppe and, it was close and who's going to have to look after this? It's going to be me once again. So I didn't react too strongly the first year. But then every year he'd come back and, hey, wouldn't this be a great spot? Because he knows what he's talking about. Because he's planted milkweed, at least he probably planted about 6,000 plants from seed, and then he transplanted them to distribute it to the public, over 1,000 of them. So he's very active in that. So I knew that it was a lot of work. So every year he'd come to me and say, hey, wouldn't this be a great spot? Look at this spot. Well, it took me a couple of years, and finally the third year I was starting to to say, okay, I'll find out. So we found out about the property. That was the first step. And the property there behind the drugstore, it doesn't belong to the city. So we were told, well, if you want another property, it would be a little further along the way behind the firehouse, the fire station, or along Gauvin Street. So we went to the end. It's right across from Surette Street, where you enter on the trail, and that's where we built our garden. So we transplanted mature plants instead of taking little plants that we use to distribute to the public. We took these from home. We took plants that were more mature. This is a plant that if you rip the tree, the branch, or the stem, or the branch, or a leaf, this milk comes out. It's toxic, but the monarch caterpillar feeds on it, and that's what. And it's important. Now, it's not all predators that won't touch the butterflies, but it protects them because it's most other animals don't like that, the milk. So we brought them from Chez Louis Mille, we brought some from my house, and we planted them. And so we have a garden that's pretty well planted. We have some plants that are 2-3 feet high already. They flowered and they produced the seeds. So then so I have some examples for you. Even have some. I have some pods. If you're interested, I have some pods that contain the seeds. If you want to look at them, I can show them to you afterwards. So we planted those and we transplanted some flowers that attract butterflies, other types of flowers, because the butterfly has to eat as well. And the milkweed is not mature, not in flower, so the monarch can't use that. So the city offered the property and provided the plants as well, even the plants. And we're dealing with Mr. Charles Leblanc, and we're really pleased of the associated with him for the swallow nests. We've been dealing with him for seven years. This is our 7th year. And for the milkweed garden, they tilled the soil, they prepared the property for us, and so it's ready. We checked to see if we'd had any visitors. It wasn't eaten. We found 3 or 4 eggs. We even found 1 caterpillar, but it wasn't a good year for monarch butterfly. They had a hard year. The last year there were a lot of them. This year, not so much. So the milkweed, you know why? It's that the butterfly only eats that, and the butterfly comes from Mexico. It takes 3 generations to come all this way. And once they reach here, well, those that are born here go back to Mexico. Instead of staying just a couple of weeks, they'll stay a couple of months and then head back down towards Mexico, and then they turn around and come back. So the city of Dieppe prepared these wonderful information signs, displays. I was able to see one. It's not prepared. It's not completely finished yet. We're working on it, but they'll be in the garden. We're going to work on the garden, and we're going to add other types of flowers. The flowers had a hard time this year. The milkweed is pretty robust. It's a swamp milkweed, actually. It's a swamp plant. So it resisted this year, but where we set it up is not really well drained. There's a lot of clay. So perhaps we'll have to improve the drainage, and the city is going to have to put more plants, but we said we'll do it. I mean, it took us time. There were a lot of us working on it, but we asked if they could add 4 or 5 inches of earth on top to plant. So that's all I had to say. I'm at the end. He talks a lot. No, but when you should have seen the number of people who'd stop. I couldn't get over how the number of people who people would stop, would ask us questions. We explained everything. People were really into it. And so people would work there for the everything, the butterfly to arrive. And I couldn't get over it. People were really made aware of the whole situation. And then people would say, well, next year you're going to add more, right? You're going to put some over there. And we're going to wait for now. Okay, great. Thank you for the presentation. I don't know if you have any questions from council. Alexandre, do you have no. As Mr. Perron said, all the signage is going to come back later. We'll have time to talk about this. Okay, great. Thank you then. Thank you for your presentation. Very instructive, very informational for us city folk like me. Thank you very much.
Ça nous amène à notre prochaine.
This brings us to our next presentation about on the local climate zones. Yes, it'll be me again. This is Aifa, who is a master's student in environmental studies here at the University of Moncton, but she's also trained in chemical engineering as well as water sciences. And she decided to do her internship with the University of Moncton to work on the local climate zones. And this will be information on managing different zones, managing the properties. So this is great, with pleasure that we have the local climate zones of Dieppe. And before starting my presentation, I have to express my appreciation to Dieppe for having given me this opportunity. I also want to thank Dion Fortin and another person for their support for this project. So over the past few decades, we've seen quite a radical transformation in urban centers, and there've been a lot of expansion. There's been a lot of organization, etc., and additional population as well. So this urban growth has given rise to a worrying and overlooked phenomenon called urban heat islands. So what are these phenomena? Well, these are found inside a city where the temperature is higher than the surrounding areas. And because of the accumulation of heat generated by human activity, as well as urban structures and the decrease of green spaces. So if we look at the way we come to this problems, we want to know what urban factors influence heat islands in Dieppe, how plant density affects temperature distribution in Dieppe, and what role do human heat sources play in Dieppe's heat islands? So we want to identify the heat risk zones, analyze the influencing factors, assess the impact of green spaces. Let's go on to what we see in the scientific literature can give us when it comes to urban heat spaces. We heard about this for the first time in the 1940, and they absorb heat through its materials and everything. It's a variable phenomenon, And given the parameters that influence urban heat spaces, there's the morphology, so the building height and the width of roads, the type of material used, some have a reflective power, and of course the size of the community, among other things. So the climates in the town give certain which give us a chance to look at urban heat climate. And so we'd see that the average temperature, precipitation, humidity, and wind are essential factors that have to be taken into account. They have a significant impact so when it comes to urban heat islands. And yes, for this project, we used satellite images and that are obtained through Copernicus, and we also used OpenStreetMap to be able to compare the different aspects of Dieppe, for example, the roads, the buildings, etc. And also we used Python as well as ArcGIS for looking at the data, especially the satellite images. And finally, we also used Google Earth to digitalize and to be able to determine what the local climate zones were. So for this, we had to use a methodology. And there are two methods mainly. The first was based on a remote sensing method based on the LCZ map. And so I've attributed a category which shows that each part is given a different class that gives us a chance to have a map for the full image. And so there were two types of ways of doing it. There was the raster processing and the vector processing. And finally, an improvement to improve that. And the second method is based on the geographic information system. And so we already prepared a digitalization on Google Earth. And so we're able to use this to have the data cleaned up and taking account of human error and incoherences to make sure that the information is properly secure. To evaluate or assess the results, we use the kappa tool, and this looks at the proportion of agreement observed between two sets of data, and that's the formula as you can see it there. And so here, this shows the results that we were able to get through the methods. We see the comparison of the results of the different approaches. And so we see that they were obtained through methodical area of getting them. And the result is very interesting. Using these tools have allowed us to get very good results. And thanks to this approach, we were able to identify the classes and the trends and the approaches, which would make it easier to make informed decisions having to do with climates. So we identified 13 classes or 13 categories from A to we were able to look at we were able to produce 11 classes from 1 to 8 and from A to G. And this allows us to to have different types of climate specificity and other details. But also, it might not reflect very well all of the variations that we find in this region. With segmentation, we're able to have different spatial objects for which, but by working through these, we're able to make the data clearer. So after looking at the Kappa tool, we saw that there's quite a that when we look at theoretical and reality, we found it to the component goes beyond a simple randomness, and that there is a certain correlation that we see in that.
Il y a quelques animations ici qui tu l'as pas mis. Ouais.
Ça se peut que j'ai pas. C'est peut-être la version antérieure de la présentation.
Ok,
Je passe à travers les.
Oh, pas grave.
That's okay. So here we see the different classifications that we find locally. So after classifying everything, these categories are characterized by the different buildings, whether they're very tall or not so tall or not that tall. And as well, we got classifications, for example, F, where there might be a mix of one-story buildings and compact soil. And as well, we've seen in different places there can be anything from the buildings can be from 1 to 3 stories, and this can make a difference. And also we have the industrial areas for the classifications that we've identified according to the soil cover. We're able to define the classes from A to G. A is mostly wooded and where there's almost no occupation of the land. And then in B, it's lightly wooded with a different with a certain cover, with a certainly somewhat inhabited. Then in C, there's been a certain type of landscaping with different types of trees and shrubs. D is characterized by mostly plants and herbs, and characterized as well by very few trees. E is that it's mostly rocky. F is characterized by sand or soil with very few trees or plants. And finally, G, which is characterized by water courses and rivers and others. So the
Il manque une autre carte.
Il y a une confusion dans la présentation, je suis désolé, c'est moi qui
inaudible. The question is inaudible.
Juste une seconde. Ah. Oh oui, c'est ça.
Ok, je suis désolé.
Pas grave. Est-ce que je peux?
Oui, si ça vous dérange, si on reprend à...
Can we? Okay, there's an important point. If the the matters of temperature that she would like to address now. Yes, I talked about the methods based on different things. There are different parameters, but because of a lack of data, we had to interrupt the process at that step. So we decided to set up a capture tool in order to measure pressure, humidity, and other characteristics. I already talked about the comparison of the two methods, the assessment of results. Should I read this again? It would be clearer now. So that information shows the 7 local zones. So we identified, as I said, these different areas in Dieppe as the classes, the 5 classes, and so with a lower buildings and a more permeable earth. Okay, there is we can find these different places in different areas of the town. For class 7, is characterized by one-story houses and some trees, and there are urban heat islands and microclimates that are specific. And class 8 is characterized by open 2 to 3 story buildings, and there are a few trees, and there are heat islands and plants that have fewer impermeable surfaces. Class B is there's less dense vegetation. This could make heat islands worse with fewer other places. Class C, shrubs, etc. It's a little too permeable, but they help by absorbing less heat and providing some. Okay. Class D, characterized by here the earth is exposed directly to the sun, and therefore there's a lack of a reflective material. In E, it's paved, and with a paved surface, and there are few trees, and this contributes to the heat with an accumulation of heat at the surface, and there's a lack of vegetation. And F has a landscape that is there are few trees and few plants, and few reflective surfaces, but they could help to moderate everything by absorbing some of the heat. But this would lead to more heat in these areas. And G, it's for lagoons, the sea, and rivers, etc. And this helps having zones that can reflect the heat. So given this section for Dieppe, we say in the northeast of Dieppe, near the mall, we see mostly class 5, right in the downtown, mostly 6 and 7, and near the international airport, we mostly see class 8. And in the northeast, it's the southeast. We see mostly Class B, and within the city itself, Class D. And on this map, this has been put together and shows similar results based on the first method, but there are some other classes. Class 2, for example, where we have average-sized buildings, compact and dense zones, paved and few trees. And then this is due to accumulation of heat between buildings and due to materials such as cement and others, and a lack of trees. And that's mostly at these in the center of the city. And in class 10, and here we can see if lower industrial structures, fewer trees, and a lot of pavement. And so this can lead to accumulation of heat, mostly due to the pavement, among other things. So since I could not find a occupation map for the soil in Dieppe, I presented one myself, and we can see all sorts of characteristics. And we can see this with parkings, forests, bare earth, buildings, etc. And we see this all has an impact on local climate, and we can compare the local climate zones with others, and we see so the soil occupation maps and the climate zones show the compatibility between the urban landscapes and the local climate conditions. The compatibility between the soil occupation map and the climate zones show how the landscape interreacts with the climate conditions. And so it's important to talk about what the soil is used for in urban planning to have thermal comfort, etc. So here we see what we have for the accumulation of the different urban urban heat islands, and we have to see more vegetation, as well as increasing vegetation, creating green spaces, reduce paved surfaces, use reflective materials, and promote sustainable transportation. So that we can conclude that this project was able to better understand the urban climate in Dieppe. The results revealed a diversity of local climate conditions linked to urban uh, the urban landscape, as well as the density of buildings and the presence of green spaces. The correspondence between the climate zones and the use of soil shows the influence of soil use on the climate, and this lets us know what the interactions are between the urban landscape and the local climate, and it shows what the challenges are when it comes to the climate challenges. Here's another map generated by, well, that was generated with this. I put it at the very, very end because the resolution wasn't the best, but it's a complementary results to what we've seen before. And thank you for your attention. Thank you. Anything to add? I'm sorry about the technical problems. There was a problem in the original version, and I had a modified version that had been prepared for her, but for us, what this means is that it gives us this gives us data that we can add into our long-term planification. Any questions for Aoife? Questions from members of council? Lisa Genet. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your work. I'm sure that will help quite a bit Alexander with his for Alexandre with his work. I was wondering, for us in Dieppe, the zones to watch more closely and quickly, and we should make modifications. These are those that have been identified as LZ5 or 5 or 6, 5, 6, 7, 10, and even for other classes, according to the type of soil, these have to be seen as risk zones, zones at risk. For example, class D would be included in that. So after that, will the strategy be different according to the zones? Yeah, to be honest, this work would require a different study for the on the economic side. We have to look at different levels, a detailed study to complete this work. So these are general measures to mitigate these thermal places, but we can't say that in this zone that it is at more risk than others necessarily. We would really need another study to confirm these. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Leboutillier now. Thank you. Well, you've just answered my question. I was wondering what the what challenges we'd have, and you said we'd need another study. You're right. Thank you. Mrs. Goodboo. Yes, this is one of my questions as well. I mean, it's very academic, so we have to observe it. We have to absorb it because often if it's too generalized, it doesn't work as well. But I know that there's it's good work that was being done in past years in its urban planification to look at these issues. And we don't have zones 1, 2, 3, but there's still a very, very good work done for that. But now it lets us know that despite those efforts, we would have to look at other things as well. And I'm wondering if the information could be used in other sectors for zoning and others. I don't want to give it too much importance, but I'm wondering if we could use this more in time, where this might be. Would I be wrong in saying that? No, you wouldn't be wrong. Certainly, AIFA already made a presentation to a part of the Sustainable Development Department and other services as well. And certainly, we'd like to see the conclusions of her study. And she's continuing to study certain things. We just see it with when we talk about zone 6 areas are certainly at risk of having a zone of urban heat islands. Yes, Mr. Simon, thank you. But generally speaking, the information to measure these things, are these things going to stay there? And will we be able to continue using it? Yes, it's with our partner, Mr. Fortin, that we'll continue to work on following this and on capturing this data, temperatures and everything. So certainly they are easily accessible, but just high enough to be away from the public. So yes, we can keep them there. Thank you. I don't see any others. So thank you for your presentation. And the comments from council reflect the thinking of council and staff of the municipality. If we didn't want to hear the message, we wouldn't have asked you for it. That's as simple as that. So thank you for this great collaboration with Mr. Fortin and others for this presentation. Truly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Alors, pour la prochaine présentation, c'est le groupe de scouts de
The next
Dieppe.
presentation will come from the Dieppe Scouts. And you don't look like Lise Frigo, however. No, Lise was busy elsewhere, so I'm replacing her here this evening. And good evening, Your Worship, councillors. My name is Benoît Doyon-Gosselin. It's my 10th year as a Scout volunteer. I'm a group leader here in Dieppe. I'm also in charge of the training of adults for the whole Atlantic region, because you know that there are scouting groups elsewhere. So yes, I have all sorts of slides with pictures, with all sorts of text. I can take 15 minutes. I can take half an hour if you allow me, but I'll try and limit myself to 15 minutes. I'll explain what Dieppe contributes to the city, to the residents, and to their children. So what is our mission? Well, our mission is to promote and support the integral development of young Canadians, Francophones and Francophiles, to reach their full potential as individuals, as members of their communities, and as citizens, to play an active role in the society. We are part of Scouting Canada, which was mostly originally Catholic, but not anymore. But for this city, we socialize our youth in French, which is great for Francophones, of course, who have two Francophone parents, but for newcomers or for couples that have one Anglophone, one Francophone parent, this is great to socialize. And we have, over the last 2 years, we've seen a lot more people from elsewhere, from Ukrainians and people from North Africa as well. We're really interesting to see the different makeup of the groups today. Now, speaking of these groups, the Dieppe Scouts are mixed groups. They're always girls and boys, with group leaders that are men and women as well. Essentially, it starts in grade 2. The beavers are grade 2 and 3. Cubs are 9 to 11 years old. And this year we have trailblazers from 11 to 14 years old. And we can have ventures as well, or also for 11 to 17 years old. Just to give you an idea of how many youth we had last year, well, this year there are double the numbers. The effects of the pandemic are over. We really have a great number of people who are interested. And the scouting movement is, well, it lasts for 10 months of the year, from September to the end of May, middle of June. So it lasts all year, and it's really affordable when you think that, when you think of kids who play hockey or do gymnastics or something, which is very expensive, whereas the scouting is very affordable for parents and for children. And furthermore, those who have difficulty can go with Pro Youth and, with as any other activity of the city. And if you weren't aware, the scouting locale is in the Rotary Club, but it's the only building that doesn't belong to the city. It belongs to the Scout. There's no longer a mortgage or anything. Scouts built it, they own it, but of course it's on the city property. So we have an excellent cooperation with the city, and we're happy that it continues that way. And I'm going to show you a picture of it, but it's not only for the Scout movement. A couple of evenings a week, the pavilion is used for a number of other activities. So there are 2 meeting rooms upstairs. There's one large gym type room in the basement. We have a fully equipped kitchen. We have washrooms with showers, which is perfect when we have camping activities or for other organizations who rent the facility occasionally on a regular or on an irregular basis. There's also a place to build a fire outdoor with authorization from the fire marshal, of course. There's a new shed there as well that was just set up, and this is through the different partnerships. The shed was built by the youth of Mathieu Martin, those who were studying carpentry, and we paid for the material, but we're in these partnerships with a number of different entities. And of course, we're really lucky in this, and I like these groups, the scouting groups in Moncton. They meet in a basement, a scout in a church basement on Mountain Road, but we have a park all around us. We can go to the Maison Doiron. We can do all sorts of outdoor activities. Now, in 2020, 22, 23, last year we only had 2 units. We had the Beavers and the Cubs. We only had 35 youth with about 15 volunteers, either troop leaders or managers. So we have a board of directors because we're incorporated as Scouts Dieppe, and so we have to fill out our income tax forms every year. But we have in the February is Baden Powell's anniversary. We invite other groups to build a fire with us, a campfire. We had a camporee in Grand-Digue. All sorts of Atlantic groups met there. There's theme groups. All of the beavers, not only the Dieppe beavers, but all of the beavers have a one-day activity, or the Cubs, they all get together. They have a canoeing class, canoeing course in the pool at the UDM for those who are 9 to 11 years old, so to allow them to learn how to canoe safely. So even if they flip, there's no panic. And we have an internet site, www.scout-dieppe and so on. So now these partnerships, I just want to give you some examples. Currently, one of our 2 locales is with Mathieu Martin is there for the skill training. You know, people who have difficulty finishing their high school. There are 11 of them this year. They have a teacher. They meet there every day from Monday to Friday. The bus brings them in. So people who want to finish their high school, but in an alternative way, instead of being in a classroom at Mathieu Martin or elsewhere. So that's really important because it allows the facility to be used during the day, and it's helpful for the community. Those who are familiar with the fly mounting club, well, they used to meet at the CCNB. Now they meet in the Scout building on Tuesday nights. They are there. Café is there. You know, during the summer, there's no scouts, so people take vacation and everybody takes vacation. So Café have built their camp, their summer camp. It's a week-long camp. They've had camps for autism, for example. So in the summer, we also received some scouts from the Magdalene Islands as well in June. And because of these different programs over the years, for example, fundraising programs with provincial MLAs, and we were able to make a lot of renovation. When the locale belongs to us compared to other community organizations, but we have to pay the electricity, our hot water, the heating. If it breaks, we have to pay for it. So a lot of things were done over the last year. We replaced a heat pump. We changed the lighting to be a bit more energy savings, and so the roof one of these days will have to be changed. And we're very engaged within the community, especially more over the last 2 years. I have some examples here. The Winter Carnival. Well, during the pandemic, nobody got involved in the carnival, but we are more so now. Earth Day, we participated in that. The Foster Forest at the Rotary Park, we look after that. The snowshoe rental loans, that is not very popular, but we're still working. And for the first time ever, we had a leader from Tunisia who's there this year too. So for a long time, out of 10 of us, there were 5 Leblancs and 3 Chiassons, and there weren't a lot of different family names other than the traditional Acadian names from here. But for the last 2 years, we've had people from Tunisia, from Morocco, from Ukraine. There's a family of 3 that just arrived. All 3 kids are going to be participating, which is great. And the little Ukrainian girl who arrived last year, her mother doesn't speak French at the time. The little girl goes to school. Yeah, it's school, but with the Scouts, I mean, she's like a sponge. She learns so quickly. So I'm sure she's very good at French now. So things are changing. So yes, historically, the Scouts were a Catholic Francophone movement. And then there was the English Protestant side. but I wouldn't be in the Scout movement as a volunteer if they still made a promise to God and so on. Spirituality is important, yes, but it's not a Catholic spirituality. It would be ridiculous to do that because a lot of people come from elsewhere. And so I think this is a misconception people have. And because scouting was like at that one point, but it is certainly isn't anymore. And so other activities, they visited the fire hall, they had a Halloween evening, they had a fall camp, they go to the Université de Moncton and Eco 360. So Scout movement is not just a question of making knots and going out camping. There's all sorts of activities, and we try to vary them for our youth. So here you see some images. There was a group of from Tunisia that contacted us. They have virtual exchanges. So that's great. There's pictures of Halloween, presentations on marine biology, hikes at the Centennial Park, a summer camp in Beaumont. So yeah, quite often for the younger ones, we have camping locally because they want to go home quickly, but we can go to Alma or elsewhere a little further away for the older ones. And the Cubs, you can see they had Cub car rally. It's like before Scouts used to use amateur radio. Now they're on online. They're connected to Scouts from the world over. So that's for the Cubs. They visited the construction site in Mathieu Martin. They learned knife techniques to use a knife. So they learn how to use a knife to carve things, and they might forget it in their pocket when they go to school the next day, but they're not supposed to. But all sorts of different activity, first aid, maple preparation, all sorts of activities. That is really important for the youth. And I'm looking at this. So two of our young Cubs got a merit award for being citizen services because they're the ones who thought of the activities for Earth Day. So the further they go up in the movement, they decide what to do. They take charge. It's not up to the adults to organize them. So it's not, scouting is not school. It's not academic, but it's learning through play. And it's learning by youth, and they're helped and organized by adults. Now, outdoor activities, there's a number of them, of course. This year, for the Trailblazers, they did some winter camping. So they spend even 24 hours outside or 48 hours if they're at a higher level. And if they enter the chalet, it means they don't get their badge because they couldn't stand their 24 or 48 hours. So they work outdoors. It develops teamwork and leadership skills. I remember one who's in university now, but he was a youth from Dieppe. He was autistic, but very functional. And he would make jokes about autism because he was able to, because he was very functional. So one day, he at the beginning, he was afraid of matches. He'd hide when we'd lit a match to light a campfire. But by the end of the year, he was able to light the campfire himself. So whether it's knots or whatever, there's all sorts of challenges and that they take up, and it's individual. So that's great. Here are some examples of the camporee, the amazing race, teamwork, knots, orientation. We do orientation within the Rotary Park. You learn how to use a compass in case your GPS no longer works, your cell phone. So, but there was a man here before, the Friends of Nature. I took his name down, and I want him to give a presentation about the nest boxes. So these are people who have all sorts of life experiences. The youth aren't familiar with that, and it's great. So community engagement, snowshoe loans, the carnival, winter carnival, Valentine cards sent for Valentine's Day for the senior citizens in a nursing home. And we'll wrap up with challenges and opportunities. Challenges, yeah, there were problems in the locale. We had to through the community investment fund, we just changed all of the toilets. There were 5 of them. We just changed them up, so that's going to help. they, toilets would use 50 liters of water each flush. It wasn't very efficient. So if there's resources, if for the younger one, you need 1 liter for 6 youth. For the older ones, it's 8 youth per liter. And of course, you have to make sure they're matched for men, women, and so on. We've never had any problems of that sort in Dieppe, but we have to take it into consideration and fundraising. And Dieppe, we have financial agreements with Dieppe, either for renovations or to hoping that relationship will continue, because a lot of groups ask for money. We know that, and of course, they're with reason. But they don't have a facility to pay. If something breaks, the city looks after it. We have to do it all ourselves. So, as I said, the opportunities are interesting. The management team is dynamic. I try to be anyhow. There's an interest amongst the newcomers. That's nice. And the rental to external groups gives us rent money. I mean, it's sad if a facility only is used 4 or 5 evenings a week. I mean, the heat has to stay on all day long. So if there are other groups are interested, I mean, sometimes the elections use our facilities as a voting location. So it's great opportunity. So I don't think I have anything to add. I don't think I have much time left. Of course, I'm open to your questions if you have any. If people have already come to visit the facilities, some councillors, some MLAs have come to see how it works. And the scouting isn't as strong a movement as it was 50 years ago, at least on the Francophone side, because there is a greater number of possibilities of recreational possibilities. But I think that there are fewer people who go out camping and do outdoor activities. So it gives this opportunity to youth to do these outdoor activities. And I tell the youth, if you don't like it here, I mean, it's not the Boys and Girls Club. It's not the same. It's not the same structure, and it's not school either. If you're just here so that people look at you, no, that doesn't work. You have to be here to learn. You have to want to learn. Councillor Brideau, you bring back all these wonderful memories, and I see you're not, and I went through all of that myself. I experienced the Boy Scouts of Canada that became the Catholic Association of Canada, and then just the Scout Association. It was a special experience for me. I was also a leader later on. And when the gentleman earlier was talking about the swallow boxes, I had a group of beavers 32 years ago. We built some nesting boxes for swallows that we put up in the Rotary plant. We even planted trees at the back of the Rotary Club. And they were really special memories. And so congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, there's a long tradition. Last year, a lady, I forget her name, but I'm sure you know her. She's over 60 for sure. She called me and she said, my husband has died, and scouting was his life. Could you lend me a scarf? We had for a celebration of his life. I never thought that somebody would want to use this for the grieving, for the ceremony. Even people up north who come to Dieppe and said, oh yeah, I was in the Scouts in Bathurst. I mean, people who come back with their youth, with their kids. So sometimes they become leaders. So, I mean, I was there when my kid was there, but now he's in university, but I stayed anyhow. So I think it's great. Even I don't have as much patience with the very young ones today, but the management, the administration, and the older ones, yeah, I like it. I love winter camping. There's no mosquitoes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. Councillor Lantaigne. Thank you, Your Worship. I was also in the Scouts. It was Cubs back then, Trailblazer, Pioneer, I think. But at the time, there were the Cubs and there were the Brownies. Is that right? Today, they're all together. Is that right? In French, yes. I don't think the Brownies exist anymore in French. And the Girl Guides, they still exist. but they start younger. One of the problems, not a problem, but Scouts Canada still exists. We are the only country where there are two official organizations within the country, one Anglophone, one Francophone. I'm not convinced that we should continue. Now, I don't want the group to become a bilingual group. I mean, it's fine. There are all sorts of other activities that are bilingual. We don't need two completely separate structures, though. I think people can create programs for all youth. So there are no brownies anymore. But at a certain time, the brownies, they wanted the men to be able to help be leaders but that didn't work. And some traditionalists didn't want that. So a bunch of brownies said, we're quitting the movement. We're going to join the Scouts to be able to put boys and girls together. Our whole lives long, we're with girls and boys and non people who are non-binary. Or I was in private schools in Quebec, and the schools, I mean, just boys, just girls. I mean, it's different, but that's not life. Life is to have to deal with all sorts of people, all sorts of orientations, all sorts of politics, different politics for the older one. But no, so brownies don't exist in French anymore as far, but the Girl Guides still exist in English. Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for your involvement and your work in the community. Thank you, Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to congratulate the organization for your openness of spirit, for to see how far you've come. It's nice to see that. This is a great example amongst others. Registration is still open for this year, so people want to join, they still can. Yes, it's still open, but not for all groups. For example, for Beavers, we have 18 youth, and we already have a waiting list because we only have 3 leaders. And if we have 19 youth, we can't have 3 leaders. So we have to have 3 plus 1 substitute in case somebody's sick. The Trailblazers, yeah, that's a smaller group. No, we rarely recruit people at 13, 14 years. The ideal age is really cubs at 9 years old. That's when they get interested. But in 7 years, 8 years old, they're interested, but it's more games. I mean, I'm not going to give them a compass and try, and get them to find their way in the woods. So yes, it's still open, but we advertise on Facebook and so on the website, and it filled. But I was looking online yesterday. We have 48 youth registered. Last year, I think there were only 35. We've almost doubled. I would say that we're the second largest group in Atlantic. Caperlé is larger, but Caperlé, that's hockey or Scouts, that's all you have. Those are the only activities. So whereas in Dieppe, there's so much possibilities. So a variety of possibilities, which is great, but it's still open. But it's still limited by the number of leaders. If we don't have the leaders, we can't do more. Thank you, and have a great year. Thank you. Nobody else? Okay. So I'd like to thank you as well for the work you do and for your enthusiasm. It says a lot about your engagement. Thank you. Have a good evening. And I'm the vice dean at the university. So I'm glad to see that students are involved, and so it's another hat I wear. They pay me, but what I like to do is this on this side, the Scouts. Thank you. Thank you. So, which brings us to the exciting presentation. A 5-minute break? Okay, 5 minutes. 10-minute break. No, nobody.
On va continuer notre
So
réunion.
let's continue on with the meeting. I'm going to allow our director to present the next item. Thank you, our CIO. Good evening, everyone. As we had done last June, we had given an update of our progress made in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan is ongoing. We're already preparing to start the review of it next year. You're going to be involved in that process as well. But for this evening, Marie-Claude Landry is here. She's in charge of this. And she's responsible for collecting all of the information, all of the actions that have been identified from the staff, and to put it in a format that you will see is far more interesting than just a series of figures. So Marie-Claude prepared this presentation for you and for the public to inform people who are online. So without further ado, Marie-Claude, it's yours. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, Your Worship. I'm pleased to continue to give you a progress report on the strategic plan. Am I the one who has to advance my slides? I'm sorry, I'm quite new at this technology. So I'd like to remind you of the mission. The mission is to shine as an inclusive and modern Francophone city that is proud of its Acadian roots and provides first-rate services and infrastructure in harmony with the environment. It's always important to remind ourselves of that vision and the mission. The vision is to be a welcoming, dynamic, and ecologically responsible city. It's a city in which the values are integrity, inclusion, and innovation. In the strategic plan 2020-2024, there were 6 strategic areas, 6 pillars, if you will, in which you find 22 different strategies. All of these strategies and these different areas are addressed by all of the different municipal services. We have 15 municipal departments, so we had to develop a tool that would allow us to follow all of the actions offered by all of the departments and services offered by the municipality, and to make sure that we were able to align everybody, that everybody was aligned to the plan, to our strategy. So the idea was to develop a tool that would allow us to align all of the action plans, to follow the progress made, and then to identify when there are roadblocks, to be able to act and support the different teams. What we did in 2023, we developed a collaborative tool. It's a dashboard that includes the 6 strategic areas. All of the action plans are listed within this dashboard. You can follow the progress and you can see how they are progressing, and you can see if there are any roadblocks. So you can, it's really a summary, an at-a-glance document. Contrary to the presentation that you received at the beginning of the summer, where they were talking about performance indicators, here we don't talk about key performance indicators. We talk about progress in the action plan. Each sector, each division, each department has to have its own performance indicators. But what I measure is the progress of the actions in terms of the strategic plan. If you have any questions along the way, please interrupt me. No problem. So the first strategic area is to develop and promote the vitality of the Francophone community. The 4 strategies had been to, develop and promote the vitality of the Francophone community and promote the Acadian pride amongst cultural and community development, to enhance inclusion in cultural and recreational activities, to enhance the sense of belonging and engagement, and to maximize the use of public and community facilities. Our first strategy for community and cultural development was developed and promote the vitality of the Francophone community and promote Acadian pride. We realized that 69% of our action plans have been achieved. For examples of some of our achievements, we have spoken out publicly on the francophonie. We've promoted different Acadian Francophone activities. We had a summer program developed with our partners. We celebrated le 15 août. There was the Day of la Francophonie as well, and we're reviewing our linguistic policy as well. as well as other actions in the action plan, but you will see them a little later. In order to enhance inclusion in the second strategy, or to include inclusion in different activities and programming, recreational and cultural programs. And currently, we are reviewing the policy L16, which is the grant program. So we have 38% of our actions have been completed.
For the third strategy, which is to value the sense of belonging and citizen involvement, most of our we want to put in to value different cultures in our communication tools, show diversity in our visual communications, and we held a Canadian citizenship ceremony here at Town Hall. And we are going to take a look at the revision of policy L14, the accreditation of community organizations. We are preparing interventions for the buildings that keep clients that seem to have special needs, and we are going to assess the needs when it comes to prevention. Strategy number 4, maximize the use of spaces and public spaces and community equipment. And we want to revise signage for our buildings. And you can see that 19% of that has been done. And we have to look at assessing the use of our infrastructures, revise policy L1 for the rates to be charged, and policy L8 for how everything is attributed. The next issue or next thrust of the development of a green and sustainable city. We want to update and implement a sustainable development strategy, protect our green spaces, and continue the development of parks and trails that favor nature and ecological diversity. Talk about our natural attributes, including our marshes and water bodies, among others. For number 1, updating and implementing the sustainable development strategy, we created a environment service. We develop, adopt, and implement a bylaw on trees. We updated the greenhouse gas action plan, and we planted more than 10,000 new trees, including 500 at the Rotary Park with the help of students from École Mathieu Martin. So 78% of those strategies have been completed. And it comes to the next one, protect our green spaces and continue the development of parks and trails that emphasize nature and ecological diversity. We have been able to get 50% of our goals attained, and we do buy certain pieces of land for accessibility and development of our green spaces. So, for example, allow people to go from Amuro Street directly to green spaces in the area. As well, the third strategy, putting emphasis on our natural elements like our water courses and marshes. We want to promote parks and trails, and I also have a garden for the monarch butterflies. 50% of our goals have been attained for that one. To improve and favor different types of transportation, and 29% has been realized there. We had to design and finance the multifunctional trail at the Fox Creek and Melanson streets, have a future vision for public transit, redefine the mandate and structure and service of collective transportation, public transit, and study electrification of the municipal fleet. And there's another one that hasn't been done, a route safety or street safety plan. Next issue, economic development and prosperity. And so we want to see densification of downtown and have a great cultural life, develop a great place for the development of business and a culture of innovation and creativity, make a Dieppe a tourist destination. When it comes to the first one, to see densification of downtown, 99% of our plans have been attained. We, of course, are looking at the densification plan for downtown, promoting an investment incentive for downtown. And also we saw the return of an active cultural life at Place 1604. There was for the zone connection and, of course, fun on the ice. For the second strategy, having a proper milieu for the development of a business and a culture of innovation and creativity. So by having through expansion Dieppe, we are offering professional support to entrepreneurs. There were 8 new businesses. The 21st annual expansion Dieppe banquet was held, and we are having networking with the regional business milieu. Third, make Dieppe a tourist destination. We saw the development of an attraction strategy and also having it welcoming sports, culture, and other activities. We added someone responsible for tourist initiatives, and of course we are collaborating with Expansion Dieppe when it comes to tourism. Some examples here of great achievements during that strategy. We saw, of course, the success of YQM Country Fest, as well the Canada Cup Cycling Championship came back, Ringgit Canada came back, and of course, Hockey Dieppe Memram Cook with events in Dieppe. Become the choice destination for Francophone immigration in the Atlantic provinces. Oh, just a minute. And as part of that, a few examples. Promote our immigration strategy, be actively present at regional initiatives linked to French immigration, collaborate with Expansion Dieppe for the economic part, and define how services should be offered to welcome new arrivals. Our fourth thrust, properly planning the territory and having quality infrastructure. So favor the development of land already being used within the city, maintaining existing infrastructures in good condition, stimulating the development of the territory according to the different areas already identified, like the downtown, business park, industrial park, etc., and optimize infrastructures that are already there as well. And so under number 1, favor the development of land already being used. 66% of our actions have been achieved. We saw a study for the need of housing, a policy on affordable housing, and we're trying to have a strategy and plan of action, or an action plan rather, for long-term housing. And now maintain existing infrastructures in good condition according to recognized standards. 39% of our actions have been achieved. We saw the reconstruction and repair of 2.8 kilometers and preventive maintenance for 3.1 kilometers of streets and roads. We maintained the youth hostel and the and City Hall. We repaired the tennis Dieppe and the Dieppe Soccer Club buildings or infrastructures, and also for information technology, we updated the business system being used. Third, with concerning the planning of the territory infrastructure, is to stimulate the development of the territory according to the areas already identified. So we updated the steering plans, the business plans, and the financial structure for expansion Dieppe. And this includes mostly the downtown and the industrial park and the business park. We saw $14.5 million of investments. Fourthly, improve and optimize existing infrastructure and add new infrastructures that meet the future needs of the municipalities. 51% of our goals have been reached. We added bus shelters, public benches, and a center for transfers for public transit. At the Uniplex, we added something on the ground to have a skating rink. We have updated town planning bylaws as well as the policy concerning the telecommunications tower. Fifth thrust, quality citizen participation. So we had two strategies. The first, increase citizen participation in municipal decisional process and continued diversification with proper communication tools. So we want to improve the citizen participation in municipal decision making. So we had surveys for the tree bylaw and for housing, affordable housing, and we held 6 public consultation sessions already, and we'll have one on the future of public transit. And we've seen, and there were different times when the public was asked to come and give their opinion on these citizens, on these subjects. And now when it comes to having better diversification of communication tools with people, we want to develop communication tools to better explain planning and development processes. We added information on the website, practical information on the street plans, and we're working to have an alert system for the citizens. We have our more people on our Facebook page now, and 7.6% for Instagram, and more subscribers to the network X, which we used to call Twitter, of course. It's interesting to see that we have more than 10,000 people that are following our Facebook page. Now, finally, quality municipal governance and management, and there are 4 main thrusts under that one. So the first is to continue improving transparency of municipal government, bring attention and support to our human resources, which is the most important part of our municipality, continue our efforts to have a proper financial management at all levels of our organization, and continue the improvement of management in general. So continue improvement of transparency and governance in the municipality. And so we want to have a new follow-up tool to let us see the action plans linked to strategic planning. There's a presentation of the quarterly financial report to council, and we will make it easier to share information with the community. And special attention is being brought, and
La municipalité au service des citoyens, mais on a 52% de nos actions qui ont été
52% of our goals have been attained for that. We want to complete the implementation of the organizational structure, and in other words, try to properly make sure that the new positions are properly surrounded, properly led. And also when it comes to recommendations, we want to have that coaching, and we're going to have some aptitudes for coaching and feedback for some of these places, and also continue our efforts concerning a proper financial management. And so we've looked at our budget process. We have a new process for human and financial resources. We restructured the accounts for the main ledgers, and we are having an actuarial study done on the assessment of a sick leave. So 47% of our goals in that case have been achieved. Of course, what I'm telling you, these are examples of actions. And if you want more information, I could give it to you. But the list is pretty long. You already have 15 of them done so far. And the last strategy, from the last thrust, continue improvement of our methods and work processes. And we want to add to the team of fire investigators. We updated the municipal plan for the emergency measures, and for cyber security, we have a multifactorial authentication for all staff who connect remotely, and we will adopt a bylaw for standards for emergency access. Okay, I've got some more. Let's see. And we updated documentation on the intranet. Okay, we revised the internal policies that are currently in force, and we wrote up procedures and documented procedures for the different services. And we're
façon de faire à l'interne pour vraiment améliorer nos méthodes de travail.
Updating our work methods. And also there's a project for document management with the University of Moncton. We'd announced it last year, and it is continuing this year. We have we have a culture of constant improvement and we always have new projects. So in 2023, 12 new projects. There are 4 that have been completed, 6 are still underway, and 2 projects still haven't been started just yet, and perhaps may have to wait till 2024, but know that each year 10 improvement projects are generally completed for the city. And that ends everything. Do you have any questions? I think we do. Let's start with Mrs. Leboutillier. Thank you, Your Worship. 2 questions. In the different thrusts and the strategies that come from them, Is there a way of weighting them when it comes to their evaluation? The planning, I'm working with strategic planning from 2022 to 2024. So there was no prioritization, and there were no key in performance indicators. This is something that we may implement for the next strategic planning. At this time, they are simply, all the strategies are at the very same level at this time. Fine. Next question. Given the diagnostic, we've gone from 50 to 75%, etc. Is it because we're at 75% that we're left with another year? There's one more year, right? So is there a way, some support in place to make sure that some things that were a priority, to make sure, let's say that we really want to get to 75%, are those things in place at this time? At this time, there were no tools for the strategic planning. So we set up our own tools just to align with that. So, I mean, I can't see that we're at 69% of strategy X has been attained necessarily, because is it over 4 years or is it over 5 years? So the only thing that I can report is the fact that we're at the strategic update. All right. And there will be improvement parts for the next one. I would like to thank all the directors, all the team. Certainly there are great things. There's excellent. That's quite a bit of work, and it's nice to see that we will have that tool to truly align ourselves, and really very well done. Thank you, Mrs. Turgeon-Roy. Thank you, Your Worship. And this is more, I mean, it's to know, given what we got before from Moncton, destination Moncton Dieppe, it's linked, I'm making a link with economic development and prosperity. I see that number 3 is to make Dieppe a tourist destination. And we talked about a welcoming strategy for different events, for sports, cultural, or other activities. Now, where are we at when it comes to having an attraction strategy? Will that be presented to us? The starting point of that strategy was the agreement with Destination Moncton Dieppe, and now we have a new person who will be working on the initiatives at the site. And perhaps Luc or Denise could answer that question, because it's their sector. Okay. Okay, to answer your question, there's no strategy at this time. We want to develop that. We want to see what kind of elements we want to put in there. And we made a demand, we made a request rather, to help for some help to help complete that next year. So the first step was to really have everything aligned. Yes. Yes. We're hoping that we want to have this aligned with an event that might take place in 2024. And Mrs. Goodboe, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I mean, I certainly found that interesting. We see great accomplishments, great achievements, and the question by Councillor Le Boutillier when it comes to weighting everything, I have a bit of trouble with that as well, given the fact that we've been able to advance quite a bit with the plan. We can start to see that there are perhaps some areas where we might not perhaps get 100% of our objectives, but like any strategic plan, we have everything we'd like to see, and then there's and then we have to compare that to where we may manage to get. But perhaps perhaps you could have an update to know if some projects were dropped because they weren't feasible. Perhaps what was needed in 2020 is no longer needed today. Would be interested to see what you have, or perhaps you just see what you will not be able to attain in 2024 and what may have to be carried over to the next strategic plan. Not tonight, but at some point, it might be time to take a look at that and perhaps prepare ourselves for what may be coming up. It would be interesting to see if there are some things that we already know that some will not be achievable before 2024, that some may have to be carried over to the next strategy.
The major issue for me was to align 15 different services and action plans on within one strategic plan, and I think we're going to do that for the next strategic plan 2025 2030, and that this experience is going to be very helpful. Yeah, I agree with you. Collectively what we have to do, we have to get our head around it, if you will, and so this is very helpful. Your presentation is going to help us in our thought process. Councillor Thibodeau, you have your hand up and have had your hand up for a while. Is it on this? No, I did not raise my hand. I just wanted to be sure. The hand is up there, so it's... No, I can't see it. Okay. We just removed it. Nobody else? Okay, no further questions. So thank you for your presentation. It's quite a difficult job to prepare that. And I think it clearly indicates the direction that council and staff have to take. Sometimes you can get bogged down in the events themselves, but I think it's clear that at least around the table, the council table and around amongst the staff, there is a positive vision for all sorts of good reasons, including looking at the future positively. So thank you so much for your work. Thank you. Now, it's going to be a little drier, if you thought. So we are now going to move on to the second quarter financial results with our money man, our favorite money man, Stéphane Thériault. Oh, it might be a little drier, but I'm sure you're really eager to listen to me after everything else you've heard. Yeah, and you're number 8 on the list. So good evening, councillors, colleagues. So this is my second presentation of this year on financial reports. I had reported up to July, and so now it'll be from July to September. It's basically the same as you saw 3 months ago. The surplus are almost the same, but I will explain them again, and we'll go through these figures together. The general operating budget, out of $71 million budget, in terms of revenue, we should be around 41 million. And that's what was budgeted, but the actual was 42.2 for a surplus of 1.3 million. For the expenses, similar, we were expecting a budget of 30.7 million, and we had the actuals were 29.3, so a surplus of 1.4 million. And I will show you all the details in the next slides. Revenues. Here, you can see the first 2 lines, property tax and financing New Brunswick is exactly what we expected. No surplus, no deficit, no change. 38 million for out of 65 million for tax, property tax, and 0.53 out of 0.90 for New Brunswick financing. And other revenues, there's 1.3 million so far up to the end of July. So we were expecting to have 2.39 and we're at 3.7 million in revenues. That's 3 or 4 things to explain that. First of all, the building permits. We are having a very good year. We had budgeted $600,000 for the year, and so far, or 400,000 to date, but we've received over 2 million so far. So right there, that's $850,000, $900,000 surplus in terms of the budgeted revenues. And then the surplus, the revenues rather from the arena, the aquatic center that are higher than what we had forecast. It was 130 for the arena, another 130,000 for the aquatic center. So all of that together gives us 1.3 million. And there was other surpluses. For example, at the Uniplex, it was paid for by the insurance. So we received $400,000. We got a grant for cycling Dieppe, so for the Rotary. So that got us $1.3 million. Now that's on the revenue side. On the expense side, at the first line, that's where there's the biggest surplus. We had a budget of 22 million. We've expected to have spent 20.74 million so far, but we've only spent 11.79 million. So it's almost $1 million surplus for the salaries. Same thing as I've mentioned several times for vacant positions, because we've had a number of new positions created in 2023, but they weren't filled on January 1st. So that creates a surplus. Until the person is hired, there's a surplus that's created, and there are surpluses because of the people who have left, departures. They have to be replaced, but it takes a certain amount of time, so that creates a surplus. And there's also a short-term disability that the salary comes out of our expenses, but the insurance pays for it, so it's a surplus for us there. I'm not going to go through all of the expenses here. There's nothing of really to note. External commissions, the cost of water, operating costs, they're all pretty much on par with what was expected. Other expenses, a small increase, a surplus of $360,000. That's 9.3 million instead of 9.6, but we'll see what's left over, it really is by the end of the year. That's just a small amount now. So in summary, earlier, we saw $1.3 million in surplus revenue, 1.4 million in surplus expenditures. That's what we have after 7 months so far. And of course, that should stabilize in terms of the salaries, because the salaries and the positions are going to be filled. There might be some short-term disability, so that might continue on, but we still have a $2.7 million to work with. What I would propose with that 2.7 million, I think I had mentioned it when I was here last time. We have to renew some loans. Now, the general operating fund, that's $1.6 million that we had made a loan for the aquatic center. So we're talking about 15 years ago. It was a loan, and I don't remember if it was on 20 or 25 years, but we still have 1.632 or something, $1,600,000 to refinance. I would suggest that we just pay it off cash and not refund it, or not finance it. That's first suggestion. Secondly, we have a loan that should be this year. It was authorized by council in 2021. No, even before then, 2019. It was authorized by council in 2019. The work was only done in 2021-22. Here, I'm talking about the artificial turf. We have $500,000 there that we should go get. We could also decide to, you know what, we have enough money, we can just pay cash, pay that out, so we don't have to borrow anything for it. So tomorrow, I'm meeting with the strategic committee, and we're going to discuss this in depth. Now, if we decide we're going ahead and we're going to take a loan, you'll see it at the next meeting. Otherwise, we could just decide to not go in that direction. That's what I propose. Now, that way we would have no loans in 2023. And as you're going to see soon, because we're going to show you all of these figures soon. It's very dry, but it'll be substantial for the capital of a budget. There are some decisions that'll have to be made in that. So if we can use this surplus and not have to borrow, that's what I'd like to see as well. Now, let's move on. The water and sewage. Here we have revenues, a budget of $14.7 million. We should be at 10 million approximately. It's a little higher than that. So there's $430,000 surplus. Now, how to explain those 430,000? Well, the number of units is much larger than what I had forecast in the budget. There's two types of client, if you will, for water and sewer. There's the fixed rate clients, residential clients, $248 per quarter, or $948 per year, rather. And they're at fixed rate. I had budgeted 8,750 units, but we're at almost 9,000, so $250,000 extra units. So 948 times 250, even a little higher than that, because this was just the end of July. So I'm expecting a $700,000 surplus. Currently, we're at 430,000. That's the first one. Secondly, those who have water meters, mostly commercial, apartment buildings, Champlain Mall, the airport, and so on. You take the quantity of water they purchase, you divide it by 240, which is the equivalent of 1 unit, 240 cubic meters. And I had estimated about 3,500 units within that group of consumers, but it's almost 4,000 units in that group. And so in my opinion, I didn't really go into depth and analyze that figure, but there are a greater number of apartments or a larger number of apartment buildings that have come online that use a lot more water. And I assume that that's where it's coming from, but it's a good thing. We're going from 12,250 units to 13,000 units. So that will improve the bottom line for 2024, of course. So that's a surplus in the revenues, 420,000. I've already given you all of the details, so let's move on. And this is my last slide. This is for the expenditures. You can see that if you look here in the right-hand column, this is what we expect. There's no surprises here, what we had a budget so far and what happened in actual. So no surprises there in terms of the expenses. It's more on the revenue side that we received more than forecast. Now, there's also a renewal of a loan for the water and sewer, $760,000, I think. At the speed we're going, let me come back. We're at $430,000 surplus. I think we should be at 700,000. I think it would be very close to having enough surplus to pay for that renewal. What I suggest is that, well, I'm proposing it, is that we pay this one off cash. We have the money, or almost. And what you don't see here is that on the expense out, there's a transfer to the reserve of $600,000. And that $600,000 from 2023 was a surplus in 2021. According to our financial statements, we don't use the surplus from 2 years earlier to balance the budget. It becomes revenue, in fact, because you jump a year, so you see it 2 years later, and right away we put it as an expense, as a transfer to the reserve. So if I come up with $600,000 or $700,000 surplus at the end of the year, I can go to that transfer to the reserve. I can take $100,000 to make sure that we can pay that loan off cash. So that's what I'm expecting should happen there.
Ça termine ma présentation.
So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions? Thank you. So, Mrs. Le Boutillier, thank you. What's the maximum that can be sent to the reserve? When it comes to, sorry, for water and sewer, it's 5% of the previous budget. So in this case, we're talking about 625,000, but we already maximized the reserve, the function. There's the capital reserve where we could put as much as we want. And you're probably going to bring it up at the next meeting, but the renewal rate, where are we? If we want to renew a loan, what would it be now? I don't know what it is, but it could be 7 or 8%. I couldn't really tell you. I haven't gone to borrow anything lately. The last time we borrowed anything was last year, and it was at 5%. I couldn't tell you what the rate is now, but I'm pretty sure it probably went up to 7. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Brido. Thank you, Worship. When you talk about the capital fund, you say there's no limit for the reserve. Now, when we have money invested in that reserve, let's say that there's something to which we want to invest. Can we draw from those reserves to cover? We're talking about two different things here. Or when it comes to general operation, or when it talks about water and sewer. If ever there's a deficit, the reserve can be used for the capital reserves are just for capital projects. All right, thank you. Thank you. Other questions? Well, we're going to congratulate you for such a clear presentation tonight. You're welcome. All right, have a good night. I think that applies to everyone. Have a great night, everyone.